The palace of the Valyrian Empire stood high above the clouds of the capital world, glowing with soft purple light as evening approached. Every corridor shimmered with ancient symbols, every pillar and stone carrying the weight of 1,000 years of royal history. Servants moved quietly, guards stood with perfect discipline, and the world below carried on with its normal rhythm. But inside one private chamber of the Grand Palace, a secret was forming that would change everything the Empire believed in. Queen Sarathia, known across the galaxy as Sarathia the Wise, walked slowly through the long hallway. Her steps were calm as always, but inside her mind she felt a strange worry she could not ignore. A message had come from the royal healers, urgent, unusual, and confusing. They requested her presence immediately for a matter that involved her only daughter, Princess Ilara. The queen's heart tightened at the thought of something troubling her child. Ilara was the future of the Empire, the one Sarathia had trained for leadership since the day she was born. She was strong, disciplined, and gentle, but also young, still learning how to face the heavy expectations of an entire civilization. The queen expected a report about illness or stress, something manageable and simple, but the healer's voice had sounded too serious, too nervous. As she reached the medical chamber, 2 guards opened the doors for her. The room was bright, filled with soft blue lights and advanced healing crystals, but her eyes went straight to the center, where Princess Ilara sat on the edge of a medical bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her silver blue hair, usually smooth and neatly arranged, fell messily around her shoulders. Her eyes looked swollen, as if she had been crying for a long time. Queen Sarathia felt her heart twist. She moved closer, gently placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Ilara trembled. Unable to look up, the queen turned to the healers who stood nearby, shifting uncomfortably. "What happened to my daughter?" the queen asked softly. "What is wrong with her?" The chief healer swallowed hard. Even he, a man who had healed battle wounds and saved soldiers from deadly illnesses, looked frightened to speak. After a long moment, he finally said, "My queen, the princess is healthy, but there is something you must see." He activated a glowing panel. A holographic display appeared, showing a scan of Ilara's body. The queen stared at it, trying to understand what she was seeing, and then she froze completely still, because the image revealed something impossible, something she never imagined seeing inside the body of her daughter. The princess was carrying a child. Queen Sarathia blinked, unable to believe it. Her breath caught in her throat as she took a step forward, staring at the glowing image again, making sure her mind was not tricking her. But the truth was clear. Ilara was pregnant. She turned to the healers, her voice shaking only slightly. "You are certain?" The healer nodded firmly. "Yes, my queen. But there is something more you need to know." He hesitated again, as if searching for the right words. "The child is not fully Valyrian." The queen's heart began pounding. She almost whispered the question she already feared. "What do you mean?" The healer lowered his head. "The baby is half human." Silence filled the room like a storm about to break. Even the machinery seemed to stop humming. Queen Sarathia stared at her daughter, trying to understand how this could be possible. A Valyrian princess carrying a half-human child. This had never happened in the entire history of her empire. The royal bloodline was sacred, protected, and tightly controlled. Every marriage and connection was guided by tradition. A human partner was considered unthinkable. Not because humans were inferior, but because the cultures and biology of both species were believed to be too different. But the proof was right before her eyes. Princess Ilara finally spoke, her voice soft and shaking. "Mother, I'm so sorry." She covered her face with her hands, tears falling again. She feared her mother's anger more than anything. She feared disappointing the Empire, but most of all, she feared what this meant for the child growing inside her, an innocent life that did not choose the circumstances of its birth. Queen Sarathia stood silently for a long time. She felt 100 emotions swirling inside her: shock, confusion, disbelief. But she also felt a deep sense of protection rising from her heart. Ilara was her daughter. No matter what happened, No matter what rules were broken or what the galaxy would say, Sarathia knew she had to support her. She gently lifted Ilara's chin so their eyes met. "Tell me everything," she said softly. Ilara nodded weakly and tried to take a deep breath. She explained what happened months ago during a mission to a remote moon. The princess had been sent on a diplomatic journey with a small team, but their ship crashed after a sudden energy storm. The crew was separated, and Ilara found herself stranded in a dangerous forest full of creatures she had never seen before. She was injured, frightened, and alone until a human explorer named Evan found her. Evan had been studying the environment of the same moon. When he discovered Ilara, he quickly treated her wounds, built a temporary shelter, and protected her from the wildlife. For weeks they survived together, waiting for rescue. They shared food, stories, fears, and hopes. Ilara learned about humans, their nature, their humor, their courage. Evan learned about Valyrian culture and Ilara's royal responsibilities. They trusted each other more with each passing day. At first, their bond was simple friendship. But when two strangers face danger together for so long, something deeper can grow without them even noticing. Ilara spoke with tears in her eyes, saying that Evan never took advantage of her trust, never tried to impress her, never treated her like a royal figure. He treated her like a normal person, someone equal, someone real. Their connection became natural and sincere. The queen listened to every word, slowly understanding things she never expected to hear. But she still had one important question. "Ilara," she said gently but firmly, "do you trust this human?" Ilara nodded without hesitation. "Yes, mother. With my life." Queen Sarathia closed her eyes for a moment. She knew the council would explode with fear. She knew the noble houses would protest loudly. She knew other empires might see this as a political weakness. A royal heir with mixed heritage was something no one was prepared for. But she also knew she could not make decisions based on fear alone. She opened her eyes again, filled with a quiet strength. "The child must be protected," she said softly. "And we must understand who this human is." She turned to the guards standing by the door. "Find the human named Evan. Bring him to the palace peacefully." The guards bowed and left immediately. The queen gently wrapped her arms around her daughter, pulling her into a warm embrace. Ilara cried harder, burying her face against her mother. Sarathia held her tightly, feeling her daughter's fear and fragile hope. She realized that this moment was not just a personal family matter, it was the beginning of something larger, something the entire galaxy would eventually know about. After a long while, Ilara's tears slowed, though her breathing was still shaky. The queen helped her lie down and assured her she would not face this challenge alone. She sat beside her, brushing her hair gently, remembering how small she was as a child, how she used to run through the palace gardens and dream of being a great ruler. The queen wondered how this unborn child would change those dreams. The healers left quietly, giving the queen and princess privacy. The room felt peaceful again, despite the heavy truth that had just been revealed. Queen Sarathia looked at the hologram one more time. The faint outline of a tiny life glowed softly inside her daughter. A life that carried both Valyrian blood and human blood. A life that could cause chaos, but also bring unity. A life that might shape the future of their two worlds. As the queen watched the small image, she felt something unexpected slowly filling her heart. Hope. Hope that maybe this child was not a mistake or a threat. Maybe this was a sign that the galaxy was changing in ways they had never imagined. The quiet moment was interrupted only by the queen's soft whisper to herself. A whisper filled with truth and fear and courage, all at once. "The storm begins today," she murmured. "But I will not let it destroy my daughter, or her child." And with that promise, a new chapter of their lives began, uncertain, frightening, and full of possibilities, but unbreakable in its love. The search for Evan began the moment Queen Sarathia gave the order. Across the capital, the royal guards moved with quiet precision. They did not storm buildings or frighten citizens. Instead, they followed clear evidence and respectful questioning. The queen had insisted on peaceful treatment, because she did not want the human to feel hunted or threatened. She only wanted answers and understanding. Evan, however, had no idea any of this was happening. He was living in a small guest quarter provided by the Valyrian Science Council. After returning from the crash site months ago, he had been invited to stay on the capital world to share his observations about the dangerous moon. He believed he was doing routine work, writing reports, speaking with researchers, and learning about Valyrian culture. He never imagined that his peaceful days were about to change so suddenly. That morning, he was preparing data charts when he heard a soft knock on his door. When he opened it, 2 Valyrian guards stood there, tall and calm, their armor shimmering faintly. Evan blinked, surprised but not scared. The guards bowed slightly, which confused him even more. "Human Evan," one said in a deep, respectful tone. "Her Majesty Queen Sarathia requests your presence at the palace." Evan's heart dropped for a moment. He wondered if he had broken some cultural rule or misunderstood something important. But the guard's tone was not hostile. Still, an invitation from the Queen herself was no small matter. He nodded and gathered his things, trying to stay steady. His mind raced with possibilities, but none of them came close to the real reason he was being summoned. The journey to the palace was long and quiet. Evan sat in the transport shuttle, watching the glowing city pass below thousands of floating platforms, towers, and walkways. The Valyrian capital was breathtaking, a perfect blend of ancient tradition and modern technology. Yet Evan could not enjoy the view. His mind kept returning to one person, Ilara. He wondered if she was well, if she had recovered from the crash, if she had told her mother everything. When the shuttle landed in the palace courtyard, Evan stepped out with a calm but nervous breath. Guards walked ahead of him, guiding him through tall golden doors, along endless corridors filled with murals of past rulers, and finally into a large hall with ceilings so high he felt like a small speck inside a giant's home. The Queen was waiting. She stood at the far end of the hall, her expression unreadable. Her presence was strong, controlled, and powerful. Yet something gentle lingered in her eyes. Princess Ilara was not beside her. Evan felt both relief and worry at the same time. He bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, if I have done something wrong, I am ready to explain." The Queen studied him carefully. There was no anger in her face, but there was depth questions, concern, and something he could not identify. "You have not done anything wrong," she said calmly. "But there are matters we must discuss, matters involving my daughter." Evan's heart hammered in his chest. He knew exactly what she meant now. His breath caught, but he did not look away from her gaze. He forced himself to stand tall, reminding himself that he had nothing to hide. Queen Sarathia signaled for him to follow her into a smaller, more private chamber. The door closed behind them, leaving only quiet air and soft light around them. She motioned for him to speak. "Tell me," she said gently, "how you came to know Princess Ilara." Evan told her everything: the crash, the injuries, the shelter, the storms, the long nights of exhaustion and hope. He described how he protected Ilara from wild animals, how she helped him repair equipment, how they kept each other alive. He spoke with honesty and respect, carefully avoiding any details that might sound dramatic or self-important. The Queen listened without interrupting, but her eyes never left his face. She watched how he spoke, how he breathed, how he carried himself. When he finished, she asked, "And your feelings toward her? Speak truthfully." Evan felt heat rise in his chest, but he nodded. "I care for her deeply, Your Majesty. I would never harm her. I never intended to break any rules or bring trouble. I just wanted her to be safe." The Queen leaned back slowly. There was something softening in her eyes, as if she had been carrying a heavy doubt, and now saw a reason to let go of part of it. "Evan," she said, her tone quieter than before, "Ilara is expecting a child." He froze completely. His breath stopped. His body felt suddenly weightless, as if the floor beneath him had disappeared. He tried to speak, but no sound came out at first. He could only stare at the Queen, feeling disbelief wash over him like a powerful tide. When he finally found his voice, it came out in a whisper. "A child? My child?" "Yes," the Queen replied, watching his reaction closely. Evan sat down without thinking. placing his hands on his knees as if he needed something solid to hold on to. His mind filled with images, Ilara, smiling. Ilara scared. Ilara gentle. Ilara brave. He couldn't believe it. He hadn't even imagined something like this. Humans and Valyrians were biologically compatible? How? When? The queen watched him carefully, trying to measure what kind of man he truly was. After several long, silent moments, Evan lifted his head. His eyes were filled with shock, confusion, fear, but also a quiet determination. "Your Majesty," he said finally, voice steadying. "If this is true, then I will accept responsibility. I will not run. I will not hide. I will protect Ilara and the child with everything I have." The queen did not expect such a strong, immediate promise. She had prepared herself for excuses, fear, or denial. Instead, she saw honesty and courage. It reminded her of Ilara's words, the trust she placed in Evan, the way she described his kindness and bravery during their survival days. But the queen still needed to see with her own eyes how Evan acted under pressure. Words were important, but actions carried truth. She stood and walked around him slowly, thinking deeply. "Evan," she said finally, "there is something I must ask of you. A test, not of science or strength, but of character." He stood immediately. "I'll do whatever you ask." "There is a district outside the capital," she explained. "It was hit by a radiation storm last night. Many citizens are injured. Our teams are working, but we lack enough hands. Go there, help them. Show me that my daughter's trust in you is not misplaced." Evan felt fear, but only for a moment. Then he nodded firmly. "I'll go now." The queen sent him with a team of healers and soldiers. But she asked for one thing: detailed reports of everything Evan did. The journey to the damaged district took less than an hour. The area was a mess, buildings cracked, streets filled with fallen structures, frightened citizens searching for missing family members. The air still carried the faint smell of burned metal. Evan's instincts kicked in immediately. He did not wait for instructions. He rushed to help a group of children trapped under a collapsed platform. With 2 soldiers, he lifted heavy debris and pulled the children out, calming them with gentle words, making jokes to distract them from their fear. He carried an injured elderly alien on his back across a broken bridge. He helped a healer stabilize a patient who was losing consciousness. He shielded a group of citizens from falling debris when a damaged tower shook dangerously. Everywhere he went, he worked with courage and compassion, showing no hesitation, no complaints, and no fear for his own safety. Soldiers took note. Healers observed him closely. Everyone sent reports back to the palace. Meanwhile, Queen Serathia waited in her private chamber, reading updates one after another. With each message, her heart softened a little more. She had expected a human who might panic, might retreat, or try to protect only himself. Instead, she saw a man who put strangers before his own safety, just as Ilara had described. Princess Ilara, who had been resting in her room, asked the queen's aid for news. When she heard how tirelessly Evan was working, she felt both relief and deep emotion. She remembered countless moments from their survival days, how he always walked behind her to make sure nothing attacked from the shadows. How he made her laugh when fear felt too heavy. How he treated her wounds with steady hands, despite exhaustion. Back in the damaged district, Evan finally collapsed to one knee after many hours. A healer approached to offer water, but Evan shook his head slightly. "Are there more people?" he asked. The healer looked surprised. "You should rest. You have done enough." Evan forced himself to stand again. "I'll rest when everyone else is safe." The healer sent that report directly to the queen. By the time evening arrived, Evan had helped rescue over 60 citizens. His clothes were torn, his hands bruised, his body aching. But there was a peaceful strength in his eyes. When he returned to the palace, he found the queen waiting for him. She looked at him in silence for a long time. Then she nodded slowly, as if making a decision that had taken her all day. "You have proven your heart," she said softly. "I understand now why Ilara trusted you." Evan bowed his head, exhausted but grateful. Thank you, Your Majesty. The queen stepped closer, her expression no longer cold or guarded. Tomorrow, you will meet Ilara. She is waiting for you. Evan felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing clearly. He would face it with Ilara. Together. And somewhere deep inside the palace, Princess Ilara touched her stomach gently, whispering to the tiny life growing inside her that everything was going to change. The storm around them was growing stronger, but now, they were not alone, and the future was pushing its way toward them with every heartbeat. The palace woke early the next morning with a strange sense of tension in the air. News had already begun to spread among the highest levels of government rumors that something unusual was happening in the royal family. Most citizens knew nothing yet, but the council, nobles, and elite circles could feel the vibration of change like a faint tremor beneath their feet. Something important was happening behind the tall palace walls. Queen Sarathia stood by the window of her private chamber, watching the soft sunrise. Her expression was calm, but her mind was filled with thoughts. She had read every report about Evan's bravery in the damaged district. Each line confirmed what Ilara had said about him. She was starting to see Evan not as a threat, but as a man with a good heart. A man who might truly stand beside her daughter in difficult times. Still, she knew the council would react with shock, fear, and argument once they learned the truth. They were guardians of old traditions, strict rules, and long histories, and now the future heir of the empire was half human. Something this unexpected could shake the foundation of her world. As she thought about the challenges ahead, a soft knock came at her door. It was her aide. Bowing respectfully, "Your Majesty, Princess Ilara is awake and wishes to see you. She also asks if Evan has returned safely." 1. The queen nodded. "Tell her he is well. I will see her shortly." She walked through the long corridor, passing guards who bowed with deep respect. When she entered Ilara's chamber, she saw her daughter sitting by the window, sunlight touching her hair. Ilara looked tired but peaceful. Her hands rested over her stomach, as if protecting the small life inside. "Mother," she whispered, relief softening her voice. "Is he really safe?" Queen Sarathia sat beside her. "He is safe, and he worked harder than anyone expected. He proved his character." Ilara closed her eyes for a moment, taking in those words. She had been afraid the queen would find Evan unworthy or irresponsible. But knowing he had passed the queen's test made her feel lighter. "Mother, may I see him?" Ilara asked. The queen nodded gently. "Yes, he will come to you today." Ilara smiled softly. It was small, but full of gratitude. Meanwhile, Evan stood several floors below, in a quiet resting room provided by the palace guards. He had slept only a few hours, but his mind felt strangely awake. After the queen allowed him to meet Ilara, he spent the morning walking in circles, practicing what he might say, feeling both happy and scared at the same time. He was about to see Ilara again. He was about to talk to her, to understand what the future meant for both of them. He wondered if she was angry, confused, or afraid. He wondered if she wanted him to stay or leave. When the guards finally came for him, his heart felt like it was beating too fast. They led him through familiar corridors until they reached the princess's chamber. The door opened quietly, and Evan stepped inside. Ilara stood up the moment she saw him. For a few seconds, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other, remembering the weeks they survived together. The fear, the laughter, the long nights, the trust they built when the galaxy felt too big and too dangerous. Evan walked closer until they were just a few steps apart. His voice trembled slightly. "Ilara, I had no idea. I didn't know you." Ilara shook her head gently. "I didn't know either," she whispered. "Not until I returned to the palace." He looked at her stomach, then into her eyes. "Are you okay? Are you scared?" She gave a sad but honest smile. "Yes, but I'm not scared of you. I'm scared of what the council will say, of what the people will think, of what this means for our child." Evan took a slow breath. Whatever comes, I'm here. I won't disappear. I won't walk away. I promise. Ilara stepped closer, touching his arm gently. She felt the sincerity in his voice, and it comforted her in a way she couldn't fully explain. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she felt like the weight on her chest had lifted. Their reunion was quiet but deeply emotional, two people standing together, knowing the galaxy outside was about to challenge them in every way, but they were not alone anymore. Later that afternoon, Queen Sarathia summoned the Royal Council. The chamber was large, filled with glowing symbols, and shaped like a circle so every voice could be heard. High-ranking nobles, advisors, generals, and spiritual leaders took their seats. They sensed something serious the moment they saw the Queen's stern expression. When everyone settled, the Queen rose, holding her staff of authority. The room fell silent. "My council," she began, her voice strong and steady. "We face a matter of great importance, one that concerns the future of our empire." There was immediate tension in the room. The nobles exchanged uneasy looks. The advisors leaned forward. Everyone waited. Queen Sarathia continued. "Princess Ilara is expecting a child, but the child she carries is not fully Valyrian." Murmurs exploded instantly. Shocked voices filled the chamber. One noble stood abruptly. "Impossible! No outsider blood has ever entered the royal line." Another advisor gasped. "Who is the father? What happened?" The Queen lifted her hand, and silence returned quickly. "The father is a human named Evan. He saved Ilara's life during their survival on the moon. He acted with honor, bravery, and compassion." The council erupted again, louder this time. Some voices were full of fear. Some were furious. Some were confused. "This is dangerous," one shouted. "The people will rebel. This breaks the ancient laws." Another cried. "Our traditions will collapse. A human child cannot become heir." A third voice shouted, but not everyone disagreed. A few younger council members spoke softly, trying to calm the tension. "If the child is strong, why should heritage matter? Humans have shown bravery before. Some are good allies. Maybe this is a sign of peace between species." Still, the loudest voices were the fearful ones. And fear spreads quickly. At the back of the chamber, Ilara stood outside the doorway, listening with trembling hands. She wanted to run inside and defend Evan, defend her child, defend her own choices. But the Queen had asked her to wait until the right moment. Inside, the arguments grew sharper. Queen Sarathia remained silent for several minutes, letting the storm of voices swirl around her. Once the noise reached its peak, she struck her staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder. The room froze. The Queen looked around slowly, her eyes hard as crystal. "You forget who leads this empire," she said. "You forget that strength does not come from blood alone. It comes from courage, unity, and the ability to grow." A silence fell so deep that even the air felt still. She continued, "You judge based on fear. You speak of laws and traditions, but you refuse to see the truth. Evan is a man of honor. He protected my daughter when many of our warriors could not reach her. He risked his life for her not because she was a princess, but because she was someone in danger." Some council members lowered their eyes in shame. The Queen's voice softened, but it carried more strength than before. "And the child, my future grandchild, will be welcomed with dignity. This child will not be hidden, rejected, or treated as a mistake. This child will carry two worlds within them, and that is not weakness. That is possibility." The room remained silent, but the tension had shifted. Some council members were still uncertain, but they saw the Queen's determination and understood they could not fight her will. That was when Ilara stepped into the chamber. Everyone turned. She walked slowly, holding her hands over her stomach. Her face calm but strong. She stood beside the Queen and looked at the council with honesty and courage. "I lived with Evan for many days," she began. "We fought storms together. We ate whatever we could find. We slept in the cold. We survived because we trusted each other." No one interrupted her, she continued steadily. He did not care that I was royalty. He never asked for reward or recognition. He stood beside me because he was kind, because he was brave, and because he has a heart that does not turn away from someone in need. Some council members exchanged glances. Her words were simple, but powerful. Ilara finished with a quiet but unshakable voice. If you cannot welcome him, then you cannot welcome me, either. Because my child will know who their father is. And I will not let fear separate our family. Silence settled again, heavier than before. No one expected her to speak so boldly. The queen felt a warm pride in her heart. Finally, one elder council member stood. His voice was soft, thoughtful. Perhaps the universe is changing, and perhaps we must change with it. Slowly, more council members nodded. The storm of anger began to fade. Agreement would not come easily, some still resisted, but they could no longer deny that something important was happening. Outside the palace, however, the first waves of rumor began spreading among citizens. Whispers of the human father and the future heir drifted through markets and floating walkways. Some people reacted with surprise, some with curiosity, some with fear, but many also remembered the reports of Evan's heroism in the radiation district. Many admired his bravery. Children even practiced saying, "Hello," in human style, finding it fun. Valyria was slowly beginning to change. As evening settled, Evan and Ilara walked together in the quiet palace garden. The soft blue leaves rustled gently as they moved along the path. Fireflies floated around them like little stars. Ilara spoke first. "Today was difficult." Evan nodded. "But you were brave." She looked at him with warmth. "You too." They stopped under a glowing tree. Ilara placed Evan's hand gently over her stomach. "This is our future," she whispered. No matter what anyone says, Evan felt a deep sense of purpose rising inside him. The world around them was full of challenges, but he was ready to face them all, because now they walked together. And far above them, Queen Serathia watched quietly from her balcony, knowing the hardest trials were still ahead, but also knowing her daughter and her unborn grandchild were no longer standing alone. The future had already begun, and the empire could no longer return to the life it knew before. Weeks passed, but the tension around the royal family did not fade. Instead, it changed shape, sometimes calmer, sometimes louder, sometimes confusing. The empire was slowly adjusting to the truth that could no longer be hidden. Princess Ilara was expecting a half-human child. It was no longer a rumor whispered in markets and government halls. It was a fact, confirmed by the queen herself, and the entire galaxy seemed to be watching. Inside the palace, however, life felt quieter. The atmosphere was still heavy with responsibility, but every member of the royal family worked to create a safe space for Ilara. Guards stood watch with more care than ever. Healers checked on her daily, and Evan stayed close, helping in any way he could while learning how Valyrian culture functioned beneath its beautiful surface. Evan had been given permission to stay in the palace permanently. At first, he felt overwhelmed. Everything was too large, too elegant, too important. But Ilara helped him understand the traditions, and the queen made sure he never felt out of place. The palace staff, once stiff and uncertain, slowly warmed to him. They saw his sincerity, his quiet respect, and his gentle nature. Every morning, Evan walked with Ilara in the palace gardens. The trees there glowed faintly, and the soft blue grass felt cool beneath their feet. They talked about everything: fears, responsibilities, the future, and how strange life could be. Ilara often placed his hand on her stomach to let him feel the tiny movements. Each time, Evan froze, filled with awe. It reminded him that this wasn't just a political matter. This was a real child. Their child. A life neither of them had planned, yet both already loved. But outside the palace walls, the reactions were mixed. Some citizens saw the child as a symbol of unity. They spoke kindly, saying the baby might bring new opportunities and understanding. Young people, especially, seemed excited to meet someone who carried two worlds within them. Artists started drawing imagined pictures of the royal child. Writers began telling stories about human Valyrian friendship. The idea of something new brought hope to many hearts, but others were afraid. They believed the royal line should never change. They worried a mixed child would weaken traditions or confuse the future. Small groups protested outside government buildings, holding signs with strict messages about purity and tradition. Their voices were not violent, but they carried tension that reminded everyone of how fragile peace could be. Queen Sarathia listened to all sides. She never ignored the fears of her people, but she also refused to allow fear to control the future. Her duty was to lead with wisdom, not panic. She arranged meetings with advisors, scientists, diplomats, and cultural leaders. She wanted every question answered: medical questions about the child's health, political questions about the heir's rights, emotional questions about how the people felt. One morning, the queen called Evan and Ilara to her private chamber. She stood by a glowing table showing the galaxy in holographic form. Her eyes were thoughtful. "Earth has sent a message," she said calmly. "Their leaders know about the child, and they wish to meet." Ilara's heart jumped. Evan felt his throat tighten. The queen continued, "This meeting could change the future of both worlds. I want it to be peaceful, honest, and respectful. Evan, I want you to help prepare for it." Evan nodded slowly. "Me? Why me?" Sarathia gave a soft smile. "Because you understand both sides in a way none of us do. You lived with my daughter in the wild. You lived among my people these last months. And you were born on Earth. You belong to both worlds." Ilara looked proud. Evan felt nervous but determined. He agreed immediately. Preparations began. The palace opened special negotiation halls that had not been used in years. Workers polished the floors until they shone like mirrors. Guards practiced new protocols. Diplomats wrote careful speeches. Every detail mattered. The day of the meeting arrived quickly. The sky was bright and clear, the city glowing like crystal beneath the sun. A massive Earth ship approached the capital. Descending slowly with the help of palace air guides, crowds gathered everywhere, watching in awe as humans stepped out onto Valyrian soil. The humans looked just as nervous. Evan walked to the landing platform with Queen Sarathia and Princess Ilara beside him. When the Earth ambassador stepped forward, he stared at Evan with wide eyes. "Evan, you've been busy," he said in a surprised but warm voice. Evan laughed quietly. "You have no idea." Queen Sarathia greeted the Earth delegation with perfect respect. Ilara bowed politely. The humans bowed back, unsure of the exact tradition but trying their best. And in that moment, something small but powerful happened. Two worlds met. Not as rivals, but as people. Inside the negotiation hall, discussions began carefully. The queen spoke of the future, of peace, of cooperation. The Earth ambassador spoke of unity, scientific exchange, and understanding. They asked questions, answered honestly, and listened deeply. Evan stood between both sides like a bridge. When Valyrians misunderstood human phrases, he explained their meaning. When humans were confused by Valyrian customs, he translated gently. His presence softened the room, bringing warmth and clarity. But the moment that truly changed everything came when Princess Ilara stood and spoke. Her voice was calm but filled with emotion. "The child I carry belongs to both worlds. They will need both cultures, both histories, both strengths. I ask that Earth and Valyria help us raise a future where no child is judged for being different." The entire hall went silent. It was the kind of silence that meant something important had just happened. The Earth ambassador stood slowly. "Then we will support you," he said. "Earth will welcome this child with open hearts. We will not turn away from family." Queen Sarathia felt the weight lift from her chest. She nodded gratefully. The room filled with relieved smiles, hopeful breaths, and calm energy. After the negotiations ended, a celebration was held in the palace gardens. Music filled the air, gentle and warm. Valyrians and humans walked together, speaking, laughing, tasting each other's foods, sharing stories. Children from both species ran around the glowing trees, playing without fear. Evan and Ilara stood quietly beneath one of the garden's bright blossoms. Ilara leaned gently against him, feeling safe. Evan held her hand, feeling a warmth he never thought he would feel so far from Earth. "Do you think our child will be okay in this world?" Ilara asked softly. Evan squeezed her hand. "Yes. Because this world is changing, and they won't face it alone." The Queen joined them, placing a gentle hand on Ilara's back. Her eyes were softer than ever before. "You both did well today," she said. "You brought peace. You brought hope. And you showed me that the future is something to embrace, not fear." Ilara leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. "Thank you for believing in us." The Queen looked at Evan with sincere gratitude. "You have proven yourself again and again. You may not have been born into royalty, but you have earned your place beside my daughter." Evan felt emotion rise in his chest. He bowed his head slightly. "I promise. I won't fail her. Or the child. Or your people." Queen Serathia smiled. "I know." Night fell slowly, wrapping the garden in soft blue light. Lanterns floated above, glowing like tiny planets. Music continued softly in the background. The air was peaceful. Evan and Ilara sat on a small bench, watching the sky. Ilara placed his hand gently on her stomach again. The baby kicked, as if responding to the quiet joy around them. Evan laughed softly. "Stronger every day," Ilara smiled. "Just like their father." He shook his head. "Just like their mother." They leaned against each other, feeling the gentle night breeze, feeling the world calm around them. For the first time since the crash on the moon, they felt safe, truly safe. The Queen watched them from a short distance, her expression full of pride. She knew the galaxy would still challenge them. Old traditions did not disappear overnight. Fear still existed. Doubt still lingered, but something stronger had begun. Understanding, unity, hope. The Queen whispered to herself, "The future starts with one child, and this child will carry two worlds toward something greater." As the stars shined above them, brighter than ever, she knew the truth. This was not the end of their struggle. It was the beginning of their new era.